Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear brothers and sisters in Islam, once again to our program, Contentious or Contemporary Issues of the Week. And today, inshallah, we're going to be looking at something very, I would say, heartbreaking, or maybe upsetting. But not upsetting. I think it's something that brings a joy. Why? Because judgment has taken place on a perpetrator. And which perpetrator are we talking about? This is Brenton Tarrant, New Zealand mosque shooter, white terrorist and supremacist. Alright, who was sentenced to life without parole for killing 51 Muslims in New Zealand mosque attacks. And you all know that this happened last year. So this man victimized 51 lives. And if you look at the level of the damage that he has created on the victim's family is beyond comprehension. Because his 51 victims left behind 34 widows and 92 orphans. Additionally, the 40 survivors of his attempt murder will suffer long-term psychological effect. So the judgment took place on Wednesday, the 27th of August 2020, where this man, this perpetrator, this murderer, is sentenced to life without parole. Now, what do we know about Brenton Tarrant, his biography? In order to find out more about this man, I've got my guest today who's going to be unfolding and unpacking all about this man and his biography. So before I bring him over, I've got my colleague, I would say a friend of mine as well. At the same time, I would say that is my countryman, because we both Australians now, I guess. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming our guest of this program, Brother Osama. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Osama.
Assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum assalam, Sheikh. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. How was your day?
Alhamdulillah, Sheikh. Blessed. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. The world saw justice taking place in High Court of Christchurch on the 27th of August 2020 on Wednesday, where the court has ruled out the murder of the mosque shooter, the man, the perpetrator, and the barbaric murderer who killed 51 lives on a row. What do we know about this perpetrator? What do we know about Brenton Tarrant? Over to you, Brother Osama.
Yes, Bismillah. Sheikh, Brenton Tarrant, as we know, he's a 29-year-old white supremacist from Australia, basically. He was born and raised in Grafton, the suburb in New South Wales. So for most of his, his life leading up to the event of Christchurch, he was a personal trainer by profession. And what we know from news reports is that he went on a seven-year round trip around the world. He traveled a lot of cities in Asia and Europe. And in particular, he had a very long stay in France, which is one of the largest Muslim populated countries in Europe. France and Germany, these are the two most populated. So from there on, he moved to New Zealand, where the horrific events of Christchurch took place.
Yeah. So I guess this is good to know. His biography, where he is from. And also, I'd like to thank you for sharing this information, because I guess maybe people saw this horrific event taking place and they saw this gunman, but probably they didn't know his background. So thanks for this introduction. The second question is that I assume, but not only assume, I am confident that the crime, the horrific crime that was carried out by this man, shook the world. And we saw Muslims across the world coming up on social medias and expressing their sentiments, and also the hurt, how hurtful they were. Can you tell us more, how, from your understanding, how his crime affected Muslims across the globe?
Well, in particular, Sheikh, one thing that these right-wing terrorists make really clear about Islam is that they are severely misinformed of our practices. His crime is one of ignorance. His even in his in his manifesto, he clearly stated that he had little interest in education while growing up. So, and he's inspired by far-right extremists like Anders Breivik, who have done killings of innocent people in the past, and it just clearly outlines how the ignorance that these far-right people have, and things that they choose to overlook just so they can focus on their bias and to fulfill their desires of carrying out these type of acts. It really highlights that to the Muslim population around the world, because see, Sheikh, it's no one's safe. No one saw this guy coming. His preparation was surreptitious in nature, and when things like these are happening, boiling in the background, the best we can do is educate people the right way and what Islam is, and everything good about Islam, and what their misunderstandings. We can inshallah make an effort to clear these up.
Yeah, that's correct. That when these things happen, when it transpires, when it takes place, we need to educate the world, because there are a lot of people, Brother Sam, I do agree with you, that have misconception about Islam. And all this misinformation that they have, they're not from authentic sources. They are not from directly from the Quran. It's probably from an internet, not from a reputable person, or from authentic sources, so to say. And I was actually taken away with how Muslims responded to this crime. When the official Imam of Christchurch Mosque gave his, most profound statement, and he delivered his sermon, in the presence of non-Muslims, and he said, "Look, we are all one," and he stressed on the unification of humanity. That was outstanding for me, Brother Osama. But also in this, last week, we saw the High Court of New Zealand in Christchurch passing out the judgment. Justice Cameron delivered his verdict, and there was a 4-day hearing, and then eventually, finally, I believe that this man is now sentenced to life without parole. And we also saw that the justice actually described the action of this perpetrator to be inhuman, and he said, quoting, he said, "As far as I am, he says that I am able to gauge you as an empty of empathy to your victims." So, what do we know about life sentence without parole?
It's interesting, Sheikh. This particular sentence that has taken place for Brenton, it's actually the very first one in history for New Zealand. So this is the very first terrorist conviction in the history of New Zealand, to be honest. And I quote Judge Cameron Amanda in his saying that that's what he says to Brenton during the hearing. He says, "Your crimes are so wicked that even if you're detained until you die, it will not exhaust the requirements of punishment," which is profound, to be honest, because it shows the degree of his his actions that is taking place. So initially he pleaded not guilty for the charges, but over the lead up to the final hearings, he pleaded guilty to 51 charges of murder, 40 charges of attempted murder, and a charge of committing a terrorist act. And that's when Jacinda Ardern, and I quote her, she said that today I hope is the last where we have any cause to hear or utter the name of the terrorists. And she was referring to Brenton in this case.
Yeah. So, look, like you said that the whole world stood, actually, the whole world stood with the judgment, and we even saw the, Prime Minister of Australia also sharing his thoughts and echoing the same sentiments of the court ruling in Christchurch in New Zealand, and that he was happy. Scott Morrison said that this man was a terrorist, and probably Muslims were actually happy to see these approach from our leaders, political leaders, calling a sword, a spear, not actually, beating around the bush, but calling this Brenton Tarrant, a terrorist as he is. So yeah.
Yeah, that's correct, Sheikh. Our Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, he was quite clear in his description of Brenton. He called him extremist right-wing terrorist, which was really great to hear for him label this person like he should be labeled. And unlike other far-right media news sources who failed to highlight this guy as a terrorist, it was good to see that our Prime Minister was on the right page.
Yeah. And maybe if we can, wanted to try to bring up some of this clip, see what our Prime Minister has said.
Justice today was delivered in New Zealand to the terrorist and murderer for his cowardly and horrific crimes and attacks on a Christchurch mosque. The world must never see of him or hear from him ever again.
Forgetting also the Prime Minister of New Zealand, she was actually firm from the first day, and the New Zealanders as well. Moving on, Brother Osama, what do you think, what should be the response of the Muslims now? Because we have seen this man that is now serving a sentence, a life sentence without parole. What should be the approach of the Muslims toward these problems?
It should definitely be that of patience, Sheikh. We know that even though this might not seem as a harsh punishment, not harsh enough for what he's committed, all the lives that he's negatively impacted, but we'll still have to abide by the laws of the land. And to echo some of the discussions that there were of the criminal, the New Zealand Deputy Prime Minister Winston Peters actually he was quite direct in his approach in saying that Australia should take Brenton back to them. And actually, as we speak, Scott Morrison and Home Affairs Minister Peter Dutton, they're actually discussing plans to get him back to Australia and live his sentence in Australia rather than in New Zealand.
Yeah, that's true. So we also saw on the same day, while the judgment was in place, that the victims' families, the 51 victims' families, they all came and they were gathered and crowded at the court, and they were also not confronting, but they were kind of addressing this Victor, the perpetrator. And it was actually heartbreaking to see moms, young girls, some orphans coming there, the widows coming there, and old men coming and crying and addressing this man. So What is your take on this, Brother Osama?
Sheikh, it was heartbreaking. It's one of the most emotional things I've seen. And I'm quite I'm quite speechless because whatever we say and
Hands clenched tightly in
whatever we
support of
portray
one
our
another.
emotions,
Family members
not-
of the victims
can't
of the
express them
Christchurch
enough.
attacks
Yeah,
filed
if you can allow us, let's just watch this clip.
For many, this was the first time they could confront the man who killed their loved ones on March 15th last year.
I constantly try to imagine how my beloved Atta felt at the moment of the attack, how he faced the shooter with his chest, armed only with his courage to protect others.
Burying one dead friend is heartbreaking. How about burying a one of a kind? A one of a kind that is my son, Atta, and 49 beloved brothers and sisters in one go.
Heart-wrenching testimonies that were also accompanied by fortitude. One victim said his community and his faith were stronger than ever.
The heart is broken because we are not broken. We are come more united.
So, Brother Osama, we have seen some families sharing the sadness, their feelings, their thoughts with the Medra. I don't know. I looked at this Medra, brother, this, Branton Tarrant. I don't know, from your understanding, did he look that he had any, remorse? Was he remorseful if you look at him? Just displaying his photo there. Do you think that when he was hearing to the judgment, did he look any remorseful?
Sheikh, it's the remorse that he was feeling was that of his sentence, not for what he had done. Obviously, the highlights were emotional, and the people were emotional. But for him, it was clearly that now that he was facing the reality of finally knowing what the rest of his life was going to be like, I think that's what made him somewhat emotional or somewhat remorseful. But honestly, from my perspective, I couldn't see the remorse of killing those innocent people in him.
Yeah, that's true. And subhanallah, that just comes to mind. There's a Quranic verse that tells us the sanctity of human life, regardless of that, how that human life is, whether it's male or female, young or old, whether they are white or black, Arab or non-Arab, and white or non-white, Muslims or non-Muslims. But we are all the creation of the Almighty. So why having this hatred approach towards one another and not embracing the differences? How on earth can someone go in a mosque, in a place of prayer, and go and kill innocent people? It's just like that, and all elderly people. And I saw this old man that was crippled, and he says that bullets were flying over his shoulders. And subhanallah, why people are driven with such hatred? What do you think, Brother Osama?
Sheikh, he was only the shooter, but equally he's part of online and real world extremism that has helped radicalize him. They cheered him on as he went on about as we all know, he live streamed the event. And though Christchurch police ended this massacre less than 20 minutes after it started, the real threat from the ideology that forged this guy still is out there. And the best way, like I mentioned before, is to persevere from our end in educating people about the beauty of Islam and how, like you said, all these things, whether you are non-Arab or Arab or white or black, doesn't matter in Islam. Everyone's equal. Everyone is equal.
Yeah. Okay. Finally, I would like to thank Brother Osama for your time. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you for sparing your precious time and coming to this program. And may you have a blessed night and stay safe, Brother Osama. Inshallah, till next time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So, brothers, this is what we are talking about. That hatred, anger can cause chaos. And subhanallah, sometimes it's always good to know that a human being is created in a very unique way. Allah has given us, this fingerprint, which is different. Your fingerprint is different from your wife, it's different from your dad and your children. And this shows that we're going to have diversities in our thoughts, diversities in our beliefs. And murder does not solve any problems. Barbaric killing does not solve any problem. Massacring does not solve any problem. Look, I'm going to share this verse of the Quran with you. So the Quranic verse is self-explanatory. وَمَنْ قَتَلَ نَفْسًا بِغَيْرِ نَفْسٍ أَوْ فَسَادٍ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَمَنْ قَتَلَ نَفْسًا بِغَيْرِ نَفْسٍ أَوْ فَسَادٍ فِي الْأَرْضِ فَكَأَنَّمَا قَتَلَ النَّاسَ جَمِيعًا وَمَنْ أَحْيَاهَا فَكَأَنَّمَا أَحْيَا النَّاسَ جَمِيعًا. Allah says, He will slice a soul unless it be in punishment for murder or for spreading mischief on earth, shall be as if he has slayed all mankind, killing one individual human being without a legitimate reason. And what is legitimacy here? It's something that has to be interpreted by the constitution of your country. You cannot take laws in your hands, right? So killing a human life without any justification and any concrete reason, it is as if you have killed the entire humanity. These powerful verses of the Holy Quran. Killing one human life is tantamount to killing entire humanity. وَمَنْ أَحْيَاهَا, and he who serves one life, فَكَأَنَّمَا أَحْيَا النَّاسَ جَمِيعًا, it is as if he has served the entire humanity. So let's value every human being and respect every human being. Do not become people that are driven by the emotions. No, we are the most dignified creation of Allah is human beings, not animals. Why do we want to become like animals? We need to have mutual respect for one another. And this is exactly what Gandhi, the Indian activist, have said. So that's a quote from Gandhi. Our ability to reach unity in diversity will be the beauty and the test of our civilization. Okay? You can't have a world without diversity. Diversity of color, of language, of appearance, of skills, of professionalism. This is how the world moves. Right? Study history. You're not going to change the world by causing chaos and causing bloodshed. No ways. You need to start accepting diversities, and this is the only evidence of being civilized. I'm not saying it. Gandhi have said it. And there's also a very powerful quote from this giant, psychiatrist, Scott Peck. He was an American secretary in 1978. He published some work. So let's see what he says. What powerful words. The keys to community is the acceptance. In fact, the celebration of our individual and cultural differences, it is also the key to world peace. What more? So I would like to end my session, and inshallah I hope you all have benefited, and those who have very typical minds, negative minds towards others, the minds are polluted with these pollution of ridiculism, and also just want to kill, label others. I'm sure we're going to eradicate all these thoughts. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.